accusing RT of making sense, and he gives examples. He writes, "Consider the way RT manipulated a leaked telephone call involving former Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. Through selective editing, the network made it appear that Tymoshenko advocated violence against Russia, or the constant reference to any Ukrainian opposed to a Russian takeover of the country as a terrorist, or the unquestioning repetition of the ludicrous assertion last week that the United States has invested $5 billion in regime change in Ukraine. These are not facts, and they are not opinions. They are false claims." Well, first of all, on Yulia Tymoshenko's leaked conversation, Mr. Stengel accuses RT of making it appear, quote-unquote, appear that Ms. Tymoshenko advocated violence against Russia. You don't have to edit or manipulate anything when the person actually says that. Take a listen.
Я бы нашла, как замочить эти. И я надеюсь, что я включу все свои связи, и я подниму весь мир, как только смогу, для того, чтобы, просто от этой России не осталось даже выжженного поля.
In the case of $5 billion invested in Ukraine, Mr. Stengel makes it sound as if RT pulled that amount out of thin air. Here's the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland.
Since Ukraine's independence in 1991, the United States has supported Ukrainians as they build democratic skills and institutions, as they promote civic participation and good governance, all of which are preconditions for Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. We've invested over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these and other goals that will ensure a secure and prosperous and democratic Ukraine.
And the assertion that RT refers to any Ukrainian opposed to Russia's actions as a terrorist is simply not true. Here's just one example of the choice of words that our reporters make on the ground when covering the events there.
This is a very angry group of anti-Kiev demonstrators. We're marching down one of the main streets in the southeastern Ukrainian town of Donetsk. It seems as if the scene is being set for confrontation. And that confrontation came when they met about 2,000 pro-unity protesters, among them members of radical movements.
Well, that was RT's Paula Sleer there. The State Department accuses RT of making false claims when fact-checking is not their strong suit. Remember the story with the flyers being passed around in Ukraine's city of Donetsk requiring Jewish citizens to register with the pro-Russian government? The flyers turned out to be fake, but when they emerged, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine quickly dubbed it real deal. John Kerry referenced it in Geneva. The video that the State Department prepared to explain why the U.S. imposed sanctions on Russia also needs a correction. It makes it appear that Crimeans had two choices at the referendum, either to secede from Ukraine or to join Russia, which is not accurate. One of the options was to stay within Ukraine with autonomy granted under the Constitution signed in 1992. In our coverage, we're challenging everything that the U.S. says about Ukraine because it's worth challenging, because if the viewer only listened to what the U.S. State Department says, they would have a most distorted understanding of what's going on there. So, dear viewers, the more sources of information you have, the fuller picture you will have at the end.
Gayana Chichiken, they're sharing some of those stories and accusations towards and just basically shutting them down, right? Well, the most senior U.S. officials have continued referring to some very questionable evidence of Moscow's involvement in the uprising in Ukraine's east. Hours ago, the Secretary of State mentioned photos of alleged Russian agents who are claimed to have been seen in Crimea and Georgia. Just to remind you, that's despite the photographer who took some of the pictures saying they don't prove anything. We've got all the details which cast a shadow on what Washington has long been trying to push through as fact on our website. Coming up, some think local councils in the UK are